Welcome, everyone, to Ladder Daily Digest. We honor creators. And at Sunstone, I was pleased to meet the filmmaker, Barrett Burgin. Welcome to the show.
Thank you so much, Gene. Thanks for having me.
And thanks, Randy, for
Barrett.
co-hosting.
Oh, it's always a pleasure, Gene. And we appreciate you coming, Barrett.
Thank you, Randy. Happy to be here with both of you.
You know, our viewers are increasing, growing every day. And we really appreciate that. And we appreciate everyone who clicks onto this channel. But it would sure help us out if you wouldn't mind just liking what you watch, if you like it, and I know you will, and subscribing to the channel. Doesn't cost you anything but 2 seconds, not even 2 seconds. But we would love to have you as subscribers. And that way, when we have messages and things we want to send out to the world, we're happy to include you.
That's right. And sharing is caring. Once you see what we're presenting today, you'll want to share it with your friends and neighbors.
Yeah, absolutely. Sounds great. So this is a trailer for the short film, pioneer Mormon horror film called The Angel. This trailer's for the short film. It's played in a lot of festivals. It has several more festivals to go before it will go online. And the short film is a proof of concept for a larger full-length feature film, which we're pretty close on the financing on, and we'll be in production soon. So I'll go ahead and play this trailer for you.
Know ye the principle of celestial marriage?
We live it.
I am sent to tell thee this truth. If ye fulfill not this oath, a curse shall fall upon thee. Ye shall surely die.
I brought her as you asked.
So there you go.
So that is the trailer for The Angel, which was co-directed by myself and my wife, Jessica Burgin, and together we own Burgundy Pictures. And she regrets she can't be here tonight, but she said, go represent both of us. And so I'm excited to talk to you guys about the experience.
That's right. It's not Burgundy like the wine you drink. It's Burgundy like indie films, right?
Yes, that's right. Yeah. So Burgin is my last name, our last name, Burgin, and then DIE like indie, exactly like indie films. So, Burgundy, I guess you could say, but Burgundy is how we spell it.
That is such an intense trailer. I just love it. I love the way that starts out with the percussion and the music builds, and that little flash you get of that scary looking angel character. I can't wait to see it now. That's what that trailer has done for me. So I know it has for everyone that's watching it too.
That's right. It says Doug Jones is bone chilling, and he does a really good job.
Thank you so much.
I've become a fan of Doug Jones since I didn't really know all the things he had done in Hollywood until Star Trek series that he plays the long #1 officer that he has really long arms and walks around differently. He's from another planet. And I was like, wow, that guy's good. I liked everything he did since then. So it's awesome that you got him. And we'll talk more about that in a little bit. So Tell us a little bit about where you grew up, what it was like being a kid, wherever you were, and we'll go from there.
Okay. Well, thanks for asking. I was born and raised in Knoxville, Tennessee, which is where we live now. That's where I'm from, East Tennessee. Yeah, I've wanted to make movies since I was in the 1st or 2nd grade. And so that's kind of been the plan, never deviated from the plan. Started making movies in elementary school, but they were, of course, terrible, but, with Legos and stop motion. And and lived here until I served a mission for the church in Utah, of all places. So I was actually in the Salt Lake City West mission there. And then I ended up going to BYU and stayed in Utah for about 10 years. And I never really intended to blend my filmmaking with, and we'll talk about this more in a moment, with you know, kind of my faith identity. But I found, especially at the time, that not a lot of people were doing that, and I felt like that was something that could be explored. But as a kid, I would go through kind of different obsessive chapters of some kind of intellectual property or story or franchise that I'd get really into, and that would inspire my filmmaking, whether that was Star Wars or you know, Super Mario games, or some of my own stories that I came up with. I was very obsessive. I was an obsessive kid, and it always kind of funneled back into storytelling and filmmaking. But there aren't a lot of, at least at the time, there weren't a lot of filmmaking or movie making resources in East Tennessee that, you know, certainly not the democratization of film now, where anybody can rent a nice high-end camera, and visual effects are a lot easier to come by and to do. Editing software, cameras, that was all very hard to find. And so throughout elementary school, and then especially in middle and high school, I would sort of form my own, I would find my own resources and form my own communities around this. So I started a film club in high school. That was the fastest growing club that we had at the time there. I went to a program in high school for the arts that was in Middle Tennessee, and got in the you know, their first or second year in the filmmaking program there. It's called Tennessee Governor School for the Arts. And it wasn't really until my last year of high school when I finally, I never had the money to buy a camera that could compete in the filmmaking space. But once I was in high school, DSLR cameras started to be able to look very cinematic. And there was one called the Canon T3i that was available. And at the time, I had kind of sort of given up hope. I didn't have enough money to buy one myself. But for my 18th birthday, all my friends surprised me and pooled together a bunch of money and helped me get a camera.
Nice.
Wow.
And yeah, really meant a lot to me. They didn't pay for the whole thing, but it got me probably 2/3 of the way there. And then I was able to find the rest of the money. And that meant a lot to me.
How old were you when Super 8 came out, the movie?
When did Super 8 come out?
2011.
Yeah, that was when I was in a senior in high school. In fact, actually, that's funny you asked that, Gene. I remember now. I saw Super 8 for the first time when I was using that camera for my first film competition. So that's what I immediately did. My birthday was in December, and then immediately entered a filmmaking competition. And we didn't get it in time because we got disqualified. The rendering, it got stuck, and we weren't able to get it in time. But when I submitted the film, because I didn't know if I was any good, and I'd made some stuff and it was okay, you know, but it was just so few and far between. And Super 8 was playing in the background while it was rendering, so we ended up just watching Super 8 and relating to it. My neighbor and I.
Yeah, I wonder how many times you've been on a set where a train has gone by or an airplane, and you say production value.
You know what's funny? On my first real short film, The Next Door, that I made when I was at BYU, we needed police cars, and there were some police cars that drove by, and they gave us the blue and red lights, and we captured that and used it in the film. So that kind of
nice
style filmmaking is very true. But
and
yeah.
How many days were you in prison? I'm just teasing. They went all out for you.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, I wasn't in prison, thankfully, but yeah, that first high school short film, even though we didn't win any awards, it did steal the show. And it just did really well. And the producer of the film festival wanted to know who I was. He didn't believe that I'd made it. He was like, oh, surely some adult came in and did this. And it actually landed me a job, and I paid for most of my mission by working for him, making short films for a business that he did on his own where you'd watch the first 3 minutes of a short film and then people would compete to continue the story. And I made all those originals, and he paid me good money to do that. And that's where I made a lot of my money for my mission. So that kind of got me started. And then
your mission call was to Hollywood?
to Salt Lake. So,
close enough.
Next best thing, I suppose.
Did you ever in the old times, the olden days, before you got a decent camera, did you ever stretch nylons or pantyhose over the lens to give it the cinematic look?
No, I never tried that. That's really interesting.
I had a buddy who was a movie maker, and surprisingly, it actually gave an incredible cinematic effect.
Really?
To what normally would look like a soap opera,
Yeah.
It gives that. Yeah.
That video look. That was kind of the big thing at the time, was like mini DV cam kind of camcorder. I didn't understand as a teenager enough that like it really doesn't matter what camera you have, and as long as you are able to edit it and tell a story, that's what's most important. I felt limited by the lack of resources. And if I could go back, I probably would have done more of that, Randy. And I certainly did some of it by like, working with people who had a little bit more access. But like, I was always disappointed, when our family would get like a home video camera, and I'm like, no, that doesn't work. That doesn't count. Of course, I had not seen the Blair Witch Project as a kid, but that demonstrated you can totally tell a story with any camera. And I've now come to the view that even though we work with the best with Burgundy, like it really doesn't matter. The camera you're using means nothing. The story and then the cinematographer behind the camera is everything. And we work with really talented cinematographers every film. So
did you wonder if there were any non-Mormons in Salt Lake to baptize?
I think my assumptions about my mission and then my experience were just completely and totally different. I had a feeling I was going to go to Utah. I don't know why, but I was just like, I just think I'm going to go to Salt Lake City. And then that's where I went. Being in the Southeast, I had a bit of a chip on my shoulder about Utah. I think that happens a lot for Latter-day Saints outside of Utah. And then I went and served my mission there, and I grew to love it and understand it, and for all its complexities in sort of a different way. My mission was Salt Lake West. So it was very small. It was Magna and then some of West Valley City. It was a tiny mission.
My son lives in Magna right now.
Okay. Yeah. I mean, it's different. It's not Salt Lake proper. It's unique. It's got, culture and grit, and then I was Spanish speaking, which was kind of a world unto itself.
Oh, wow.
Felt like dipping in and out of different cultures, sort of under the culture of Utah, not just Utah, but West Salt Lake City, Utah, which is its own thing. So no, I loved it. And one thing I'll say is there was certainly no question as to who we were, like we weren't allowed to track. People knew immediately who you were and why you were there, and you could just get that out of the way, I suppose.
No shortage of dinner appointments, I guess.
Nope. No, I gained like 20 pounds on my mission.
Oh, I had 3 dinner appointments on my entire mission.
Oh, really?
I went to Spain.
Okay.
And the church was new there. So dinner appointments were few and far between. And then I hear these stories about the missionaries in Utah, and they actually have a list of, who's going to feed the missionaries. And I'm like, where was this when I was in Spain?
Yeah, we did. We were spoiled in that way. We ate every single night. In fact, I went on my mission hoping to like get better at cooking, and kind of being out on my own. And then we were totally coddled in that way. It was challenging in other ways, though. I mean, the saying, every member a mission president, is very true. At least it was in my mission. We'd get honked at a lot, or if we were coming home from an appointment late, even though the handbook was very clear on when we could get home, somebody would honk at us and yell like curfew, and I'd get so mad. I'd just be like, I hate it. Everybody's watching us all the time,
Shut up.
Yeah.
Right. Nobody knew the rules when Randy was on his mission. Nobody in the public square.
We didn't have any.
Yeah. Yeah, freewheeling. So anyway, it was unique, but certainly there was no shortage of being fed and taken care of, and that was nice.
But did you have a camera, and did you think about filmmaking? Did you think about making a film about being a missionary or anything like that?
Oh yeah. In fact, giving up, like walking away from filmmaking to go on a mission was harder than like not dating, you know, or girls or what, like that was tough, but it was what I expected, you know, my whole life. But that guy that I was doing work for, and making short films for, he's an evangelical guy and an entrepreneurial guy, and very like set up for success. He's done very well for himself. And before I left on my mission, he tried to persuade me not to go and say, hey, you can make films with me. And that, I mean, that was very hard for me to say no to. That was a bit of a sacrifice. And yeah, I haven't shared this story a lot, so I'll share with you a pretty interesting story about my first short film, The Next Door, which is available publicly on YouTube. You can go to our YouTube channel and watch it. Made almost 10 years ago now. But I almost made that film on my mission. And the reason I almost made it is I was thinking about the story constantly. On P-Day, I'd write down, and it's a neo-noir, and it's a psychological thriller. And it was based a little bit off of my experience just being a missionary and feeling a bit like a detective. I noticed that people will tell the missionaries things that they wouldn't otherwise share, and probably ought not to share. And I sort of became intrigued by, like, what if this and this and this were to happen? And what if the missionaries sort of became aware of something that they shouldn't know, really, and they ought not to. And you know, if you've been a missionary, the temptation to look further and dig maybe more than just stick into the lessons just was really intriguing to me. And I came up with this story, and I was very proud of it. It was pretty good. And we watched this, you know, at the time they were called Mormon Messages. We watched this Mormon message about a basketball player, a pro basketball player who stepped away from his career and went on a mission. Talked about how blessed he was, but that on P-Days he would practice his, you know, free throws and keep up with his game. So I sort of rationalized. I was like, well, there's absolutely no reason, you know, what's the difference functionally if I were to write and plan and do pre-production and shoot a short film on my mission, as long as it was all constrained to P-Days. And so
it's all shooting, whether it's shooting a basketball or shooting film.
Right. Yeah, I was doing my shooting, same as the Mormon Message. So anyway, I planned this film. I cast missionaries. I got a guy in our ward who had a camera, and we were going to make this short film. And something about it felt a little bit, not disingenuous, but like something about doing that. I felt like I was doing something I probably not ought to do, but I was doing it anyway because I wanted to do it. And I thought, I kind of was like, well, I don't see any problem in this. And this was a weird experience. So as we were moving forward, I found I was thinking about it more and more and more. And it was distracting me from why I was out there. And my companion at the time, who was my junior companion, I was the district leader, and I was kind of using my district leader power to be able to do this without any issue. And
district producer, I think, is what your title was.
Yeah, exactly. And my companion, Elder Higgins, I love him to death. He sat me down and kind of wanted to express his concern. This should be a little short film in and of itself. You know, just the mission is such an interesting culture, you know, and the things we fret about, right, that are serious and sort of this monastic, you know, kind of this monastery life that you're living. But he sat me down and was like, Elder Burgin, I got to talk to you about something. And I was like, you're going to tell me I shouldn't be making this movie. And he was like, I feel like that's not what we're here to do. And we talked about it, and I was like, I didn't see a problem with it. And he's like, yeah, but it's really like consuming all your thoughts and attention all the time. And he was right. And I was like, you know, if you feel wrong about it, I can walk away from this. I'm sorry. It was like me, I couldn't get away. I had to make film, you know, and here I was kind of embarrassed by the fact that I'm doing it. I'm making it. I'm building the mission around this need. And Elder Higgins looked at me and kind of pointed at me. He's like, tell you what, like if you, I promise you that if you give this up now, you'll go home and make the best version of this thing ever. And it kind of was one of these weird, like, I believed him. You know, I was like, that feels so strange.
Prophetic.
Yeah, it was this like kind of prophetic feeling. And the weirdest thing that happened is our mission was so small. So I went to this, every month we'd have this mission devotional. That's the thing. It's like we did devotional and singing, and I'm like, how is this any different? You know, but like it was different because
it was all consuming for you.
All consuming. It was, and I can admit that. And well, I went to the mission devotional. My mission president had no idea about this plan.
Side project
that I had not, and he came up and gave me a hug, and he was like, "Hey, like, hope you haven't been making any movies lately." You know, I kind of felt like, you know, sniped a little bit. I was like, "Oh my gosh, like God really doesn't want me to make this," you know. So anyway,
Randy's mission president said, "I hope you don't make any moves lately."
My mission president actually called my bishop back home and said, I want Randy's ventriloquist dummy sent out to him, because I was an entertainer, and I was a musician and a ventriloquist, and used to have a TV show and all that. And he said, I want that ventriloquist dummy sent out here. And he had me go around the city entertaining people in the plazas, you know, and gather crowds and everything. And I'm like, this is awesome, because this is my passion, you know. Yeah. So
Randy got to play. Did you get to play the guitar for your farewell?
Yeah. I played the electric guitar on my
church
at my farewell in sacrament meeting.
Well, there you go.
And did a ventriloquist skit.
That's awesome.
Yeah. So anyway, just a little side note, but
I love that. I wish
that sounds like a movie to me.
Yes, I wish we had like a mission movie, because that's so that you're lucky, you know. And I never did really have the opportunity to do. Of course, film's a bigger production, but like doing an electric guitar and a ventriloquist performance, that's amazing. Well,
yeah.
So I didn't make the film, but I went home, and my first year at BYU, I dropped out of an intro course to just apply some things I had learned the previous semester and make this short film that I had planned to make on my mission. And I felt like my companion's, you know, prophecy came true, because this short film like blew up. It shot me through the roof at the school. It's called The Next Door. It's a psychological neo-noir thriller about missionaries. It's not a devotional film. I wasn't interested in making devotional pieces. I wanted to do something that used our culture and identity, and was kind of a bridge for anybody along the faith or lack thereof spectrum, in terms of like where they were with the church. Anybody who had a Latter-day Saint experience of any kind could relate to it, and anybody who was not a member of the church could understand it and could appreciate it on the basis of like, oh, how interesting. And, you know, with films like Heretic and American Primate, we can see that does work. And so, you know, we made this short film, and we sold out like 3 or 4 theatrical screenings of a short film, 30 minutes long. We had press around it. It toured through a bunch of festivals. I brought it home to East Tennessee, and it won the film festival here. And again, just it's about Mormon missionaries, but it was taking my, let's call it cultural authority to tell a story like this, and then very intentionally telling the story in a universally accessible way. And that philosophy has guided my filmmaking ever since, in that these are things I know and understand. And so like The Angel, when you see it, Randy, it's like a deeply Latter-day Saint or even pioneer Mormon film. Like it's so intensely that way. And Jessica brought a lot of her own influence to this one, especially because it's from a female perspective. And so for the first time, I co-directed with her, and she did an incredible job. But the sort of Mormonness of it is something I don't shy away from. It is gritty, it's edgy, and it's complicated. And you'll see the sort of implications of the film very much kind of engage with the faith on its own terms from that time period. And it's been tearing through festivals the same way, because people are just interested in this. They're like, how wild, weird. And a real issue I have with how we present ourselves culturally in sort of the larger kind of context is this obsession, and maybe it's the East Tennessee in me, but this obsession to be normal and nice and not weird. And it's like, we are weird and we're not normal. And when you go around trying to convince people you're super normal and super nice, they're going to think you're definitely not normal. And I don't think you're nice at all. And in reality, the way, in my view, to be nice and to be sort of approachable is to be specific and honest and interesting and unique. And the sort of unique elements of the religion, I learned in high school that by sort of wearing those on my sleeve, that increased my popularity and approachableness, because people are like, well, that's the Mormon guy, and like, he knows what he is and he's not sorry about it, and not trying so hard to be performative or to be kind of appear perfect, but rather embrace the qualities that are complicated and interesting and wonderful and challenging. And
the Mormon, but also human.
Of course. And I mean, that's what makes Randy could probably speak to this in entertainment and storytelling. That's what makes a story interesting. It's why I like the story of Joseph Smith. I know Joseph Smith's a complicated individual. That's why I like him. That's why I relate, and sort of, not unlike, I think it was, maybe it was Lorenzo Snow. I can't remember who said it, but Joseph's like foibles and human nature, if you take seriously his theology, they sort of make all of us a little bit more like, oh, I like God could work with me, God could work in me, instead of creating this massive distance that we do culturally by mythologizing, and then also sort of skirting around the wonderful things that make a person relatable and make a person complicated. Now, it doesn't mean I, relate to everything of Joseph or Brigham or the early pioneers, but it's just to say that their complexities and their challenging aspects are what make them great characters and historical figures. And I just wish I saw that view more often.
And show me someone in the creative space that's not got a little dose of weirdness in him.
Of course.
My son lives in Hollywood. He's a big YouTuber and involved in the movie industry. And, his crowd, I love to get in and mix with them, because they're all just a little bit off the wall, just enough to make them incredibly interesting.
Yes.
And I think that's what it takes in an industry like you're in. And I don't know this, and I'm sure that the viewers don't yet, but what is your involvement with the church now? Are you an active member of the LDS Church?
I am. Yeah, I'm happy to say so. I'm very active, very believing. I probably approach certain issues, and especially when it comes to the history and when it comes to the kind of dealing with complexities and nuance, I would say I probably approach them a little bit differently than you might find, what gets criticized as conventional or mainstream. I think there is no other. I think there is no other option. I think that a paradigm shift is absolutely required if you're going to engage very seriously with any of the topics or issues. But I have a lot of faith that one can come out the other side with an enhanced testimony and a more holistic view of both the restoration movement and the restoration like proper, and also religiosity and that experience generally, which Mormonism already accounts for in a sort of universalist sense, even if the culture does not reflect the doctrine. And I hope that makes sense. I very much claim and love like Latter-day Saint theology. And I don't take issue with or blame anybody who sees it differently. I learn a lot from the tension and the complexity of opinions within the space, within the kind of combative space. But I don't think that the only, how do I put this? Like, I don't blame anybody for sort of seeing it differently. But I find sometimes kind of the black and white like conclusion a little reductive. And I also don't think that it's a necessary way to view the complexities of the issues. I'm not going to let the problems of the culture, which are very human and very normal, like we've talked about, steal my testimony. And you know, in as much as I like sustain and believe in the priesthood and the authority and Joseph Smith and the plates and all of those things, I think that issue by issue, they can all be approached in a less black and white way, and in a way that sort of accounts for culture and accounts for the brain and how we interpret and perceive truth. And I find that science, like when it comes to, let's say, Book of Mormon archaeology, that's a very classic kind of, that's a classic issue, right? I have just found that by like reading more nonfiction about sociology and anthropology and how our minds work, that sort of some science trumps other science, that it's like, it's not so important to me, that question, because as it turns out, like the most pressing kind of cutting edge data on how the mind works and how we interpret meaning suggests that the Bible or the Book of Mormon would have to be written the way that it is. That like whether or not it happened, that is the way that we engage with meaning and myth and storytelling. And that sort of increases my faith that it probably did happen in some capacity. And it probably didn't happen at all the way we might think it did, which would be consistent with a biblical sort of, oh, actually it was about your soul and not the political, and, you know, like, and so respectfully, I hope that makes sense. It's like
absolutely. I love your progressive attitude.
Thank you.
It's not, like you said, it's not just cut and dried, black and white.
Right.
You're able to look and decipher for yourself, you know, how you want to interpret it. And in my opinion, that's very progressive. I like that.
Thank you.
I think, you know, Randy and I grew up in the black and white kind of a thing where nothing happened without God's hand being in it. Joseph Smith was perfect. The leaders were always listening to God for every little thing. And finding out the real history, for me, a lot has made it fascinating, right? Because they used to be two-dimensional cartoons, you know, with halos, right? And now they're real people going through real problems and stuff.
Sure.
And so I am fascinated by Mormon history, for sure.
I think most people who do a serious study of it can't help but walk away with a sort of middle way, you know, as the Buddhists say, the middle path, and that it's not all over here and it's not all over there, and that's so freaking consistent with the Bible, with the Old Testament particularly, and with the New Testament. And I don't know, guys, that's like what enhances my faith. Church history seems more like the Bible to me than the sort of, Adam Miller put it really well. I can't quote him exactly, but he said that you kind of have to give up your cutout felt, you know, cardboard felt versions of these people. And to me, Joseph Smith so fits the profile of a prophet in the academic and sort of in the conventional sense, like Moses or Muhammad or Christ, in that it's like there had to be something going on, you know, and it's so consistent with how we do things within religion. And it is tragic to me that like, you know, it's only human nature, but like that there is such a tendency through all of time to try, you know, with good intention, to try to kind of kind of like you were saying, Randy, like to parse out the interesting things and make it a little cleaner, a little easier to digest. And maybe there's utility to that. As a missionary, I probably wouldn't have wanted to unload everything. And the Bible talks about milk before meat. And a lot of critics of the church get irritated that we don't share all the dirt all at once. And I kind of agree with the church's approach on that, but also line upon line, precept upon precept, not one precept and one line, and then like, let's never discuss it because it's not relevant to your salvation. It's like, well, wait a minute. It is if it becomes a stumbling block and it's not understood in its context. And so anyway, I don't mean to theologize here, but that's
great.
I
think it's tied to storytelling, really,
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And so tell us how your other BYU experiences led you to where you are today.
Okay. Well, what I found is that I really, really didn't want to go to BYU. I assumed, if you, as you're listening to me talk about this stuff, I assumed I was going to be way too edgy and way too provocative in my approach, and that BYU was not the place for that. It couldn't be further from the truth. I felt like I was kind of the good little church boy in wanting to even engage in the storytelling. And I don't think, and maybe you guys will understand what I mean by this, even after serving my mission, I don't think I was quite prepared in going to BYU for what, let's call it kind of the Mormon shame, I mean the shame around being a Latter-day Saint, and sort of the apologetics. And I don't mean apologetics like in the academic sense, but the sort of I'm so sorry I'm Mormon, and growing up in East Tennessee around a bunch of evangelicals, I didn't love that. For me, what I learned at church was so much more universal and encompassing and broad, and I kind of began to appreciate that different people have different geographic experiences, and sort of what is what is the kind of monolithic mainstream homogeny anywhere is going to feel a little different than when you're the minority. And what I found is that I thought everyone was going to be wanting to make church content and I'd be wanting to do my dark thrillery stuff. And it was the exact opposite. And maybe it's the countercultural strain in me, but because nobody wanted to touch it, I kind of wanted to explore the identity. It seemed controversial in a sense to do a Latter-day Saint story, and especially one that took itself seriously. Wasn't trying to be devotional, but was just trying to engage the grit and the complexity and the honesty. And so the more that I kind of got pushback on that, the more I wanted to do it. In fact, I also ran into what I did not expect. Some of the faculty, particularly an administrator at the time, didn't like that I was digging up, in his view, Mormon cinema. And I didn't understand the history. I knew Richard Dutcher, and Dutcher had even been in my film because I liked his films a lot. But I wasn't aware of the tensions around the beginning of what is, historically called the fifth wave of Mormon cinema. And how much there was all of this kind of these emotions. I just a kid from Tennessee coming to make stories about growing up LDS, and there was sort of an effort to silence that, not from what I expected, which was a devotional standpoint or this might be inappropriate stuff. Not at all. From the politics of academia and scholarship and who's allowed to tell what stories.
The echoes of Richard Dutcher's early work.
For sure. Yeah, the faculty member literally asked me once I made The Next Door, and it did as well as it did. And I did some research on this later, that 40 BYU capstone films before one that I did that overtly addressed Latter-day Saint identity and elements, 40 of them, not 40 years,
wow.
But they would do, 2 a year or whatever, had had not done anything with the identity. And so like, as I was making this, there was this sort of idea that like, oh, everybody's making Mormon stuff. It's like, are they? Like where? It doesn't seem like. And so the students kind of were cringed out by it until it did well. And then they, kind of weren't sure what to do because it was going against the trend and it was doing something unique, which is now proving itself to actually be, trendable, very trendable. But then the faculty, yes, what this particular faculty member said to me is, and he doesn't work there anymore. And I want to qualify this in just a moment, how much I loved my BYU experience. But he was like, what makes you think you can pull off Mormon cinema? And I just thought like, that's verbatim what he said to me. And I was like, what is this? What is this gatekeepy, like I'm allowed to make whatever the heck I want, and certainly don't owe it to the, the powers that be of like, well, we tried it already, and who do you think you are kind of approach. Thankfully, I had professors there who are still there, like Tom Russell and Jeff Parkin and many others, Brad Barber, who were all incredibly supportive, Courtney Russell, all incredibly supportive, and appreciated me putting those elements in my work and encouraged the students to do so. But it was certainly fraught at the time. Now I have no idea how it is now. That was 10 years ago. And there was ancient history there that I was sort of walking into. That's true of every school program I came to learn. Every college is going to have sort of the gilded towers of who's allowed to write about that or talk about that. But I didn't expect that. And this sort of course, that only pushed me to do it more because I was like, oh, well, nobody's going to tell me what I can write about or do my art about. And so went on to do more and more of that. And then I eventually kind of came to the opinion that there was a bit of a responsibility to do so, as I found that, like, I don't know that our story is being told outside of our own kind of community to one another. And there's so much here. And I love all that stuff. I became a bit of an expert on Mormon cinema, and I learned the players, and I'm friends with so many of them. But my focus became trying to say something larger through the medium of Mormonism in an accessible way, And so, anyway, sorry guys, I know I'm just talking and rambling here.
Oh.
You're getting the whole story here.
So it sounds like at BYU, at what point do all the people in your surroundings, some people want to be cameramen, some people want to be directors, some people want to do makeup, some people want to do costumes, and do you like team up and do a project?
Yeah. So, that was my first year that we did that short film. And then in the preceding years, I did several other shorts. And then my senior year, I did a capstone, and that was a lot of fun. That's mentored by a professor. But yes, very early on, you kind of find what track you want to do. And then
so you like make a film every year?
Yes. Well, I mean, at BYU, you're doing all kinds of stuff. They have an extraordinary program. And something I appreciated about it, going back to what we were talking about earlier, is BYU has the wrong reputation for, like, whatever its reputation is, must be like 20 years old. Because one, I found the professors to be incredibly informed and broad thinking and so intelligent and so talented. I felt like I'd found my little Mecca there, where I was like, this is what I've been looking for. This is wonderful. This is, the gospel is part of it, but there's also sort of an engagement with the humanities and the complexities. And the professors were pushing the students to kind of get outside of their bubble a little bit. And oftentimes
20 years ago, some people might have said, don't worry about making films. Jesus is coming.
Right.
The end of the world will happen.
Yeah.
Don't learn any skills.
And I'm sure that's still, from what I hear, it's not like that's gone, but it wasn't the it wasn't my academic experience.
Right. But I know Jesus isn't coming until after the 2032 Olympics.
Well,
right?
You know, no man knoweth the hour. So like,
yeah, but you know,
don't pay your credit card bills because it's going to happen soon.
That's right. That's right. That,
you know, Barrett, it sounds to me like you are not hesitant to throw a little barbecue sauce in the pizza, or excuse me, in the spaghetti. You know, I was making spaghetti one time, and one of these Southern gals came up to me and she said, you want to make that extra good, throw a little barbecue sauce in there. And I fed it to my family at Thanksgiving because that's a Southern tradition. I lived in Memphis, Tennessee, by the way.
Oh, really? Oh.
Yeah. And I served it, and they just loved it. They're like, well, it looks like regular spaghetti, but there's something about this. And I said, well, you know, I'd be honest with you, I threw a little barbecue sauce in there. And it didn't ruin the spaghetti, it enhanced it. And it was true spaghetti, but it was off the wall good. And it sounds like you do this with your films. You know, you're like, here's the typical ingredients for a capstone film about the church, but I'm going to throw a little barbecue sauce in there. I've always said, if you can make someone be scared, laugh, or cry in a movie, you've accomplished your goal and it will be successful. And it sounds to me like you incorporate all of those, and you throw something of special interest in there for the members of the church who are not expecting something scary.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, that's very kind of you, Randy. I appreciate you saying that. I especially admire you comparing it to an ingredient, because funny enough, that's kind of how I actually pitched it to the other BYU students, was saying the ingredient, I know we're in the thing, we're in the bubble, but I'm telling you guys from Tennessee, the ingredient is Mormonism. Just put a little bit of your identity in the thing. And suddenly, for better or for worse, it's the biggest show on Hulu. It's the biggest show on Netflix. It's the biggest movie, you know, of last year. Maybe not the biggest, but actually, yeah, Heretic was the top streamer on HBO Max. And it's because people wonder what it is. And it's like, I remember there were some BYU students writing about a Christian camp or whatever. And it was meant to be Protestant. They had all the lingo wrong, because I'm from the South. I know the lingo. And it's like, this is all wrong. Why aren't you just making it Mormons? And they were like, well, that's just so typical. And I'm like, we're 2% of the American population. And that accounts for all of us. That I'm not talking about the active. I'm saying anybody with the Latter-day Saint identity. You are the special ingredient. And that's okay to say. And like, by making it human and honest, and then making your thriller, or making your horror, or making your mystery, or your romance, or your comedy, or whatever, why do you think there was a musical? It's not the Jehovah's Witness musical, or, you know, the Watchtower musical. It's not the Quran. It's the Book of Mormon. And it's because there's a sort of, like, I'm making no comment on whether that's positive or negative. It just is. And so I really appreciate you saying that, because you're right. Within a Latter-day Saint context, that is the ingredient. But to any other general audience member, it is the identity elements that we've proven again and again and again. I say we because a group of friends. I made a group of friends that all are kind of writing and doing that same kind of storytelling. And I just think that's so important. I think it's going to become more important. I think as more people join the church and more people leave the church, it's going to be, story is what kind of helps us make sense of things. And I don't mean to overinflate its importance. I think there's all kinds of important elements, but yeah, that's what I found, is that doing so in college, and finding my people, finding my great mentors and teachers and collaborators, is what set me up for success. And then after graduating, I ended up selling a feature film that I made while I was a student to Saban Films. You can watch this on Amazon or iTunes or Tubi, I think it's on. It's called Cryo. It's not very good. It's okay. It's a student film, but it's a sci-fi psychological thriller. It's scary, but it quotes the Book of Mormon in it, and it has stuff about the veil of forgetfulness, and like nobody said anything otherwise because it's just flavor.
Right? Yeah.
It's
that barbecue sauce in there.
Barbecue sauce. So that's a cool way to put it, Randy. I appreciate you saying that.
So I think about 45 years ago, there was a group of students that left BYU and they started a technology company called Word, I think, or Write or something. And it sounds like you, in a way, might be doing the same thing with film. But do you have a lot of your fellow students involved in your projects?
Oh, for sure. Yeah. My main collaborators are friends I met at BYU, and then some students who went before me and after me. I mean, I couldn't advocate stronger for film school, and at least for my time I went to BYU's media arts program. It was phenomenal. One thing I loved about it is that they taught both production and theory and history. And so understanding and the mechanics of storytelling. BYU consistently creates fantastic storytellers. And so like our screenwriter for both The Angel and the subsequent feature called The Third Wife, Daniel too. He's an incredible screenwriter. We were in the same year. One of my best friends, Marshall Davis, who's the son of Mitch Davis, who did The Other Side of Heaven, is just a super talented director and screenwriter. We talk almost every day. We've worked together in several capacities. He works at BYU TV now and was helping me develop a TV series over there for a little while. So like, yes, absolutely. Like the connections and the collaboration. And that's true of a lot of people I don't work super closely with, that they'll work together, because they met in film school. And so that's, it's very defining. I think even moving to Tennessee, back to Tennessee after living in Utah, so many of my connections are still from BYU.
A lot of stuff can be done virtually now.
Very much. In fact, COVID did kind of murder Hollywood. You don't have to be in LA anymore. Thank goodness. I never intended to go. With a little family and probably Randy can understand this. Like you really do have to live in two worlds, especially trying to kind of follow the I don't say this in a sort of pejorative or dismissive way, but the conventional Latter-day Saint path, of married and children, and also trying to chase the networking and the film festivals. It is a lot. And I've been in LA many, many times. I know LA. It's amazing. It's also like brutal. And I just don't think I could do it.
It is. It's unforgiving.
It's unforgiving. And I'm grateful that COVID has kind of turned everything into this. Like so much is Zoom meetings, and you can fly and make your project, fly to wherever you're on location. I come to Utah a lot still, all the time, in fact. But yeah, so much of it's virtual. Gene, like as far as shooting a film, you don't have to do it on film, and you haven't had to in 15 years or more. And so you can shoot it all digitally. You can rent a camera. It's only becoming cheaper and cheaper, which sometimes makes it harder to raise the money to make the piece, but at the same time democratizes it for people like myself, which I'm very grateful for.
Sure. Right. Well, I really appreciated I got to see the screening of The Angel. I appreciated the craftsmanship, the thought that went into it. Now, was the location close to Kanab?
Oh, it was in Kanab. Yeah, it was the Cave Lakes where we shot is just right off of the road going into Kanab. We screened it in Kanab just this past spring or summer as part of the Kanab Film Fest.
So that wasn't Mesa Verde?
That wasn't. No.
When I saw the Indian ruins and the caves and all that, I thought that was Mesa Verde, but
nope,
because it's very similar looking.
Yes,
but it's talk about a beautiful setting.
Yes,
man, you nailed that.
Thank you. Yeah, some of the exteriors were shot in Capitol Reef, And that's where we had the two. There's actually, a lot of people don't notice this, but there's two pioneer cabins in the film, because it's about, two wives, two plural wives, and they each have a cabin. And those are both real locations. As much as we could, we shot on the exterior and interior of actual pioneer locations, though one of the wives' interior of her cabin is in Kanab. It's a little Hollywood set that they have there, that we shot on the inside of. And then, of course, Cave Lakes really does have the water coming up from the ground. It's just the most eerie thing. And, one of the questions we've been asked is like, why horror for a Latter-day Saint story? And I just, to me, that just feels, I almost don't understand the question. It's like, what are you talking about? Why not? Like that, that's
right.
So rooted in the history, and the first miracle of the church is supposedly casting a demon out of Newell Knight, I think it is, and like all of this detecting diverse spirits. And this was a big thing on Joseph Smith's mind, is like, man, these spirits are gonna infest you and like possess you, and you got to be vigilant that you don't get deceived. And that's so interesting, and that's so different than Catholic horror, or than Jewish horror, or kind of conventional mainstream cult horror or occult horror. It's LDS influenced, and so because we were going to be so true to the history in that aspect, we tried to be really true to the history of the filming locations, and shoot where some of these events supposedly take place. And so my wife, Jessica, she actually has some family history right there in that area of, apparently these pioneer ancestors wrote in their journals that like they had supernatural happenings and experiences and dealt with these guys that were coming to take somebody's spirit away. And like, I have no idea what to make of that. That's just fascinating, so.
Yeah, a lot of that is so skipped over and so ignored, where people are absolutely fascinated by it. And
right.
Yeah, I mean, like I said, you captured me. You had me at just the title of the trailer.
That's right.
I'm in. I'm good.
It's bold, and that means it's provocative. That means people will be talking about it, and it'll be on people's lips, and hopefully the word of mouth will make it a big event. And thanks, Barrett, for coming on our show.
Thank you, Gene.
We could have you back as the production, or interest swells and things, or if you wanted to talk about other things, or if you wanted your wife's perspective.
Yes, I'll leave you with one interesting. I'll leave you just a couple interesting things for the audience members, and for anyone watching. They're going to put the link in the description, a link to both our newsletter where you can find screenings to Catch the Angel. It's showing everywhere, and a lot in Utah if you're in Utah, and a lot of these screenings include a virtual component, so you can stream it as part of a festival for a limited time, right? So we had that for the Indie Shorts Festival, we had that for the Chattanooga Festival. It's available online for a period, and then it goes away. We are in talks of a small distribution deal to a really big YouTube horror channel, and so that's probably where it will end up online if you want to wait and just see it on YouTube, or you can come catch it in a screening. So if you click the link to our newsletter, you can see that. We'll include a link to the trailer too. One thing I'll say is we recently screened at Sunstone, which I love these Latter-day Saint screenings, and depending on the crowd, I just have no idea what we're going to get. We showed at Zion's Indie Film Fest, we showed at Mormon History Association, we showed at the Wayfair Festival, that's part of Faith Matters, and then of course finally Sunstone. And I didn't know what to expect, because as you'll see, Randy, that the film doesn't really. There are some ideological implications that are challenging no matter where you land in the faith spectrum. And what was not on my bingo card, and Gene was there, so he can confirm this, is this guy got up and he was like, hey, I used to be Mormon. I am a Satanist, And I just really want to thank you for your depiction of Satan. It was just very tasteful and like good.
Cool.
And we were like, "You're welcome." And that was that. I didn't expect that, but I was like, "Okay, well,
Sunstone, whatever floats your boat."
That's right.
That's a good talk about a good endorsement.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, I mean, for a horror film in particular, it's like we got the same, no, but anyway, we'll keep you apprised to future screenings. I just want to thank you both so much. But once we're public, we can replace the link here even on this video. And if you're watching this, a few months after it's dropped for the audience, we may have the link here in the description to watch the film itself.
Wonderful.
Well, thank you both. This has been so fun, and I appreciate you letting me ramble for so long.
That's right.
It's been a sheer pleasure to have you.
Thank you.
I saw you in Utah. I thought you were living in Utah, but I now remember that you said you lived in Tennessee, and so there you go. Hopes everybody likes the show. Like and subscribe and share. Sharing is caring. Everybody have a great rest of 2025. Bye-bye.
Thanks, Barrett.
Thank you, guys.